Now we're going to discuss bait preparation. Usually the bait that turns out to be the best and the most attractive to Yellowjackets is a raw meat product of some sort that closely resembles what Yellowjackets would eat in the wild, which is carry-on roadkills, and the body's left over when predators take it down. They clean it up, that kind of stuff. My choice is chicken. We also have, sometimes if you're working in an area where most of the Yellowjackets might be attracted to water, you can try fish. Because if there's fish in the neighborhood, they are going to love fish. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about bait preparation by slicing the chicken to the right size, which I find quite adequate for Yellowjacket baiting. First, the chicken is frozen, and then you bring it back out. You let it thaw out a little bit, but not totally. It's still very firm. You slice the pieces in one direction. Get them slices like this. That's about 1/4 inch thick, or thereabouts. And we slice them the second direction. And then we slice them again the third direction. And what you end up with is pieces of meat that are about the size of diced carrots. This does two things. It gives you a lot of surface area for the pesticides to adhere to when you're mixing it, because you're only using a small amount. 1/4 teaspoon, 10 to 12 ounces of bait. That's the perfect size. But this size is important. If you say, well, he said cut the chicken up, and you go ahead and put the chicken in the blender, then these pieces will be way too small, getting down to the size that may be on the cutting board. If you can see it here, real small. Yellowjackets can't carry that. And they can't carry that because their jaws are more like scissors than they are like spoons or something. So it's kind of like trying to carry peas with scissors. You pick up the piece and then you close the scissors and it falls off or drops out. Now we've got the chicken all cut up. We've got it measured. We've got 12 ounces here. Our mix will be 1/4 teaspoon, and we say for 10 ounces. But the 1/4 teaspoon for 10 ounces gives you a bracketing of about 8 ounces to 12 ounces. So this is adequate for a 12 ounce, up to 12 ounce. If you're getting into the higher numbers, make a double mix. I'd say 16 ounces of bait, you need 2 of these spoons, and half a teaspoon would do it. Pesticide for 16 ounces of bait. Another thing you have to keep in mind is we have diced this chicken, raw chicken, into small pieces that are not real small because Yellowjackets can cut the meat down to get the right size to take it in. But the purpose of cutting it down was to get a lot of surface area. And that surface area will give better coverage of the insecticides so that Yellowjackets are taking a piece of meat with insecticide on it back to the nest. Another important thing is this baiting program only works with protein. Protein meaning meat, animal protein. We don't like, there's no proteins. They won't take peanuts or any of the vegetable proteins. It's all animal protein. The closer you get to approximating what they would find in the wild, which is dead animals of some sort, carry-on, roadkills, animal kills that are left after they've taken what they want, coyotes, then the Yellowjackets will come in and eat the rest. If you happen to be near a river and you have the kokanee or some of the salmon spawning, you can actually see those dead salmon dying in the water and the Yellowjackets coming onto the top of the salmon and start feeding. But salmon doesn't work for most species. If you're working around a creek or a river, then these yellow jackets might like salmon. But for overall baiting, our bait of choice is almost always chicken. Okay. The product we use is a product called Onslaught. The manufacturer is MGK. It has a label that says on it, for use for yellow jacket control, follow the instructions on the traps, the bait traps. What they really meant was bait stations. Our bait stations are the stations they were talking about. We have developed a mixing capacity, or a mix ratio that is on my measuring spoon here. The mix says 1/4 teaspoon for 10 ounces of the bait. We got slightly more than that, but this is an adequate amount for this much insecticide. Onslaught only. Other products won't work. They haven't been tested. They haven't been proven. So get Onslaught, get my bait stations, and get the instructions and follow the instructions. Another thing to keep in mind with pesticides, in this case, this can start, it's a microencapsulated product, and when it starts drying out, it starts repelling insects. So if you think putting a little more in will make it better, that's not the way it works in yellow jacket baiting. You have to have less works better most of the time, because you're asking those messengers, those yellow jackets, taking this bait with the insecticide back to the nest and feeding it to the larvae. If you kill them with too much insecticide, they don't go back to the nest. You kill individual messengers, but your message doesn't get sent to the nest. So stay at the lower end, use the right product, and then mix it thoroughly with what I've said. All right, so take some Onslaught and just pour it in the bag, quite simply. Mix it up a little bit with your spoon, just to try and get the majority of it out of your spoon. Then simply close the bag up and knead it like you're kneading bread, but that's all it takes. Keep in mind, don't use more. Your program won't work if you put too much pesticide in this. Yellow jackets don't like pesticide any more than other insects do, so don't use more, because it's not going to work. All right, so now we've got the pesticide mixed in here. Again, I'll mention it again. Don't use too much. It works better with less, because all you need is a little bit fed to each one of the larvae in that nest, and the entire nest, eventually the pesticide moves through it because they share their foods. And it does go to the queen. The queen is fed by the larvae and the workers. So if you've got pesticide on what they're feeding to the queen, you'll take care of the queen, which takes care of the nest. And that's the way this program is supposed to work. All right, so now before we hang the stations out in the field here, we've got to fill up the bait stations. The amounts we use in these, let me make a comment about this. This is our personal baiting station here. This one has a label that asks people not to touch it. It has our phone number on it, and it has our website. And we are using pesticides in these. We're using raw chicken. Raw chicken is something that is attractive to dogs and cats. And so if station falls because you didn't tie the string right, or somebody just decided to take it apart and they threw it on the ground, your result is you end up with a dog walking home with this and a owner panicking. Now this gives them a place to call and get some information. We can tell them what's in there. And if you're running these in any place, any town, and you're a professional pest control person, you're working in places where you're going to see the public, it's always a good idea to mark your traps and bait stations. It gives them a place to get information, and people will appreciate it. On the other side of these, we have my label, which says it is labeled for Onslaught. It's got the EPA registration number and all the information you need if you have a problem with any of this, if a dog eats it. It's not very toxic to dogs, but it is a pesticide. All right, so next thing we do is we gotta put the chicken into the bait stations. That's basically all pesticides if you're going to work, or herbicides if you're thinking about roundabout. It's a good practice to put on a pair of these disposable gloves. They're cheap, and they're real cheap insurance too. In our industry, we don't take chances because we have too much contact with pesticides working on as much as we do. So this is about the height. See, it's not. Tip this up a little bit. If you can see into it, it's not up to the holes. It's not real solid. Set this out in about half an hour. The yellow jackets will detect the meat starting to go up and giving off the odors, and you'll start seeing yellow jackets come to it almost immediately. Yeah. This is all it takes. This is basically a child-proof or child-resistant product, and they maintain, or it is required that when you are baiting any pest species, that you have a non-food container. You can't make any of these out of. You can't use old jars. You can't use old food containers, plastic or anything like that. You can't milk jugs. You don't put pesticides in human food containers. So this isn't a food container. It is child resistant for playing with it. It can't be opened by dogs unless they chew it. We've got good labels on it. We got the size, and we'll hang it out, and yellow jackets should start doing the work for us pretty quickly. Now, bait placement is kind of critical for a lot of reasons. You are using a pesticide, so you want to keep it away from cats and dogs and children. It says right on the label, keep out of reach of children. Common sense, but not so common sometimes. People say, well, yellow jackets come more down by the ground, but if you put them down the ground, I can guarantee your dog's going to get to them before your yellow jackets do. Place them at eye height, wherever you're working. Tie it about this height. That's high enough so almost any kid can't reach it, and most dogs can't. If you put it too low, even the wild animals, the raccoons would love it. They get it low enough, the skunks will eat it too. Tie a double knot, tie it real tight, tie a double knot. And then when you're going to change your bait station, you don't have to take the string off from where you've got it tied. You just push down on the cap, take it off, pull this out, refill it, put it back on. It's still hanging there, and you go on for your second rebait. And you should be checking your bait stations about every 2 days, because if you're not checking it every 2 days, the chicken will get stale and old, and yellow jackets do not like anything but fresh meat.